The sound of breaking porcelain echoed through the rain-soaked laundry room of the Blackwood estate, sharp and final. Margaret Blackwood's hand remained raised, her burgundy silk dress catching the fluorescent light as the young maid stumbled backward, knocking into a washing machine. A strangled gasp escaped the girl's throat. No one moved. The other maids kept their eyes on their folding. The laundry supervisor suddenly became fascinated with her clipboard. Near the doorway stood Richard Blackwood himself, CEO of Blackwood Industries, close enough to intervene, powerful enough to stop it, yet saying nothing. Then a quiet voice cut through the humid air. "Madam, with respect, I am someone." Heads turned in disbelief. A poor maid had stepped forward, her faded uniform still damp from the morning's work, her posture respectful but her gaze unwavering. Her name was Lina Nwoye. Margaret's perfectly painted lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer, disbelief hardening into fury. No one had ever dared speak to her like that. The air grew heavy because everyone felt it. This was the moment silence finally broke. Before we dive deep into this jaw-dropping story, quick pause. Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. I love seeing our global Curious Chronicles family light up the map. Globe showing Europe, Africa. If you're already hooked and craving more inspiring and captivating stories that poke curiosity like this one, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We drop beautiful, heart-pounding stories every week that you seriously don't want to miss, so let's dive right into it. Lina Nwoye had learned long ago how to carry her worth inside where no one could price it. The morning she arrived at the Blackwood estate, Lagos was already drowning in heat. Danfos honking, street hawkers shouting, glass towers reflecting a sky that promised nothing. Lina stood outside the service entrance with her small worn bag pressed to her chest, breathing slowly, counting her heartbeats the way she did when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Inside that bag were two things that mattered: her identification papers and a hospital receipt with her sister's name on it. Ada Nwoye was 18 and studying medicine at the University of Lagos, a brilliant mind whose future depended entirely on Lina's ability to pay tuition. Every semester, the fees climbed higher. Every missed payment came with a warning. Every warning reminded Lina that dreams alone did not keep people in school. That was why she was here. The Blackwood estate rose above Victoria Island like a fortress of old money. Wrought iron gates, manicured hedges, silent authority. Lina had cleaned houses before, worked in hotels, scrubbed floors in private clinics. But this place felt different. Here, power was not loud. It didn't need to be. A housekeeper named Mama Efima led her through back corridors that smelled of jasmine air freshener and expensive wood polish. She spoke quickly, as if kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford to waste. "You'll work primarily in the main residence," Mama Efima said, her voice low. "Eyes down, ears closed. Do what you're told and you'll last." Lina nodded. She didn't ask questions. She never did. The main residence was nothing like the cramped one-room apartment she shared with Ada in Soyalier. The floors gleamed without effort. The walls carried paintings Lina didn't recognize but instinctively knew cost more than her yearly salary. Everything felt untouchable, including the people. That was when Margaret Blackwood appeared. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence alone rearranged the atmosphere. Tall, perfectly coiffed, her posture sharp as cut crystal, Margaret moved through the room like someone accustomed to immediate obedience. Her eyes landed on Lina for a brief second, measuring, dismissive. "New?" Margaret said flatly. "Yes, Ma," Lina replied, lowering her gaze. Margaret turned away without another word. That single moment told Lina everything she needed to know. Later that day, Lina met Mama Efima properly in the staff kitchen. The older woman's back was bent from years of service, but her eyes were alert, carrying stories no one had asked to hear. "Do not draw attention," Mama Efima whispered as they folded linens together. "Here, silence keeps you alive." Lina nodded, but something inside her tightened. She had been silent all her life. Silence had not saved her parents from the car accident. Silence had not paid Ada's school fees. Silence had not stopped landlords from threatening eviction. But she understood fear. And she respected it. The man of the house, Richard Blackwood, was harder to read. Lina saw him only in fragments, passing through corridors, speaking tersely into his phone, standing near windows with the posture of someone always calculating his next move. He was younger than she had imagined, his face controlled, his presence heavy without effort. When staff greeted him, he responded with polite distance. Not cruel, not kind, just absent. To Richard, the house ran smoothly. That was enough. Over the next days, Lina learned the rhythm of the residents. She cleaned, served, listened without appearing to listen. She noticed the way other maids flinched when Margaret entered a room. She noticed how wages were delayed for processing without explanation, how one girl disappeared after questioning a deduction, and no one dared ask where she went. She also noticed something else. Margaret enjoyed control, small humiliations, silent commands, watching people shrink. One afternoon, Lina saw Margaret deliberately knock a tray of crystal glasses from a maid's hands. Not in anger, but in boredom. The girl dropped to her knees to clean it, apologizing again and again. Richard walked past. He paused. His eyes flicked briefly toward the scene. Then he kept walking. That night, Lina sat beside Ada in their small apartment, helping her study for an anatomy exam. The single-ceiling fan creaked overhead, fighting against Lagos humidity. "How was work?" Ada asked, forcing brightness into her voice. "It's fine," Lina lied. Ada studied her sister's face. "You don't sound fine." Lina swallowed. "I just need to last. Just long enough." Ada squeezed her hand. "You always last." Lina smiled, but inside something ached. Back at the Blackwood estate, Lina kept her head down, until the morning Margaret humiliated another maid in the laundry room. The memory replayed in Lina's mind like a wound that wouldn't close. The sound of breaking porcelain, the way everyone froze, the way power filled the silence like poison gas. Lina hadn't planned to speak. She had felt it rise in her chest, an old, stubborn thing she had inherited from her mother, who once told her, "Dignity is the only thing no one can take unless you hand it over." Margaret's eyes had burned into hers. Richard's silence had cut deeper than words. Now whispers followed Lina through the corridors. "That's the one," someone murmured. "The new girl," said another. Mama Efima pulled Lina aside. "You must be careful. Madam Margaret does not forget." "I didn't mean to cause trouble," Lina said softly. Mama Efima sighed. "Trouble already existed. You just made it visible." From his study overlooking Victoria Island, Richard stared down at Lagos traffic and tried to shake the image of the maid who had spoken. He told himself it was nothing. Staff came and went every day. Employee emotions were not his responsibility. Margaret managed the household. He managed the business empire. That was the arrangement. That was how order was maintained. Yet later, as he reviewed quarterly reports he could recite by memory, Lina's steady gaze returned uninvited. Not defiant, not pleading, just present. For the first time in years, Richard felt the discomfort of a question he had avoided too long. And far below, in the service corridors where power rarely looked, Lina Nwoye picked up her cleaning supplies, squared her shoulders, and kept working, unaware that her quiet courage had already begun to shift something dangerous, something that would not remain silent for long. Lina's first official day at the Blackwood estate began at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her shift was supposed to start. She had learned long ago that being early was the only insurance policy people like her could afford. Mama Efima was waiting at the service entrance, her face already carrying the exhaustion of someone who had forgotten what rest felt like. "You came back," the older woman said, and something in her tone suggested this was noteworthy. "Yes, Ma," Lina replied. "Many don't. After the first day, they find reasons." Mama Efima's eyes searched Lina's face. "But you're different. You have a reason to stay." Lina thought of Ada's tuition invoice. Yes, Ma. They moved through a narrow corridor that smelled of industrial bleach and something else Lina couldn't identify. Anxiety, perhaps, absorbed into the walls over years. The contrast hit her immediately. On one side of a single door, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, air that smelled like imported flowers. On the other, concrete floors, flickering fluorescent lights, air thick with the scent of other people's labor. This is the line you never cross unless summoned, Mama Efima said. Out there, you are invisible. In here, you are expendable. The difference is important. The staff quarters were smaller than Lina had imagined. 6 narrow bunks crammed into a space meant for storage, metal lockers rusted at the hinges, a single bathroom with a door that didn't lock. 3 women were already there, moving with the efficiency of people who had learned to take up as little space as possible. This is Patience, Mama Efima said, indicating a woman in her early 30s with tribal marks and hands that never stopped moving. 4 years here. Patience nodded but didn't smile. Her eyes carried awareness that made Lina's stomach tighten. Blessing. 2 years. A younger woman, maybe 25, whose uniform was already damp with sweat. And Chidinma. 6 months, but she learns fast. Chidinma was the youngest, probably 19. She offered Lina a small smile, quickly suppressed when Mama Efima turned. Sit, Mama Efima commanded. All 4 women settled onto the lower bunks, postures identical, back straight, hands folded, eyes attentive. Rule 1, Mama Efima began, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Madam Margaret has eyes everywhere. She notices everything. A pillow turned the wrong way. A glass positioned wrong. A towel folded with the tag showing. She keeps a ledger. A ledger? Lina asked. Patience's eyes widened in warning. A red leather book in her private study. Every mistake, every infraction, she records it. 3 entries next to your name, and you're dismissed. No discussion, no appeal, no reference letter. Blessing's hands trembled in her lap. How many entries do you have? Lina asked Patience. The silence was suffocating. 2, Patience finally whispered. 1 for fingerprints on a mirror. 1 for coffee at 73 degrees instead of 75. Lina stared. How do you even? You learn, Blessing interrupted, her voice hollow. Or you leave. Rule 2, Mama Efima continued. Never speak unless spoken to. Never make eye contact unless instructed. Never question an order, even if it contradicts a previous order. Chidinma shifted uncomfortably. Lina noticed a fresh bruise on her wrist. Rule 3. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, you keep it here. She tapped her chest. Staff who talk find themselves unemployed. Staff who talk to outsiders find themselves unemployable. Madam Margaret has friends in every wealthy household in Lagos. 1 word from her, and you'll never work again. Has anyone ever? Yes, Patience said flatly. Grace. 3 years here. She mentioned something to her sister. Within a week, Grace was gone. Last I heard, she was selling at Ojalegba. The morning light filtering through the single window seemed to dim. Rule 4, Mama Efima said, looking directly at Lina. Whatever happened yesterday, that courage, that voice, you bury it. Because Madam Margaret is not a woman who forgives. She collects defiance, studies it, and destroys it systematically. I only said. Everyone knows what you said. That's the problem. A bell chimed, delicate, musical, deadly. All 4 women stood instantly. Breakfast summons, Mama Efima explained. 7 minutes. Patience, table service. Blessing, kitchen. Chidinma, standby. Lina, she paused. Lina, you're with me. Madam Margaret requested you specifically. The other women exchanged glances Lina couldn't interpret. "Is that normal?" Lina asked, though she already knew. "No," Mama Efima said quietly. "Never on someone's first day." Chidinma touched Lina's arm briefly. Solidarity or farewell? Lina couldn't tell. They climbed 3 floors, the carpet growing thicker, the artwork more expensive. At the top, double doors stood closed. Mama Efima knocked. 3 soft taps. "Enter," came Margaret's voice, smooth as poisoned honey. The room was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a bed the size of Lina's entire apartment, furniture worth more than she'd earned in years. Margaret sat at a vanity mirror in a silk robe the color of old blood. Her hair was perfect, makeup flawless. She didn't turn. "You may go, Efima," Margaret said, eyes meeting Lina's in the mirror. "I'll take it from here." Mama Efima hesitated, long enough for Lina to feel the warning, then retreated. Lina stood alone with Margaret Blackwood. The silence stretched, deliberate and cruel. "Come closer," Margaret finally said, lips curving. "Let me see the girl who thinks she's someone." Lina moved forward, stopping at what she hoped was appropriate distance. Margaret turned slowly, her gaze traveling over Lina like she was evaluating livestock. "Do you know why I requested you?" "No, Ma." "Because yesterday, you spoke." Margaret rose. "And I realized I'd been too lenient with staff. Too trusting. Too kind, perhaps." She circled Lina slowly. "So I've decided to implement a new system. A mentorship program." Margaret's voice was silk over steel. "For 30 days, you'll be my personal attendant. Every morning at 6, every evening at 8. You report here. I will teach you everything." Lina's blood ran cold. "And at the end of 30 days, Margaret continued, stopping directly in front of Lina, "you'll either be the perfect servant, broken, obedient, silent, or you'll have your 3 infractions. Either way, I win." She straightened Lina's collar with fingers like ice. "Your first lesson begins now." Margaret pointed across the room. "Open that drawer." Lina walked over, legs unsteady, and pulled open the top drawer. Inside was a red leather ledger. "Read the last entry," Margaret commanded. Lina's hand shook as she opened it. Pages filled with names, dates, infractions, years of them. At the bottom, in fresh ink, "Patience Okonkwo, Entry 2 Blessing Adelik, Entry 2 Chidinma Ease, Entry 2. And below, in handwriting so recent the ink glistened, "Lina Nwoye, Entry 1. Insubordination, 8:47 a.m., laundry room." Understanding flooded through her with sick clarity. She hadn't just spoken up. She had signed her own execution warrant. "2 more, Lina," Margaret said softly. "Just 2 more mistakes." The ledger felt heavy as death in Lina's hands. And somewhere in Soyulir, Ada was waking up, trusting her sister would make everything work. Margaret's smile widened. "Now then, let's discuss your first task. You'll be cleaning my Ming Dynasty collection today. Priceless pieces. Extremely fragile." She paused. "I do hope you have steady hands." The taxi to Soyulir cost Lina 1,500 Nigerian nairas, money she couldn't afford but couldn't avoid spending. It was Saturday, her 1 half-day off in 14 days, and Ada had called 3 times that morning, her voice carrying that particular brightness that meant she was worried and trying to hide it. Lina pressed her forehead against the grimy window, watching Lagos blur past. Her body ached in places she hadn't known could ache. Her hands were raw from chemicals Margaret insisted she use without gloves. Gloves leave residue, Lina, and her left wrist still throbbed from where Margaret had grabbed it yesterday, demonstrating the correct way to hold a serving tray. Entry number 2 had come on day 5. A water glass positioned 3 millimeters too far from the table edge. Margaret had measured it with a ruler in front of the entire staff. 1 mistake left. The taxi stopped outside the narrow building where Lina and Ada rented 2 rooms on the 3rd floor. No elevator. The stairs smelled like yesterday's cooking oil and broken dreams. Ada opened the door before Lina could knock. "Sister." Ada's face lit up, and for a moment, Lina forgot everything else. Her baby sister, 18 now, but still hers to protect, stood there in an oversized university t-shirt, medical textbook stacked behind her, natural hair pulled into a puff, eyes bright with the intelligence their parents had always said would take her anywhere. Anywhere except out of poverty, a bitter voice whispered. Not without money. They hugged, and Ada stiffened slightly. "You've lost weight," Ada said, pulling back. "Sister, when last did you eat properly?" "This morning," Lina lied. She'd had 2 slices of bread at 5 a.m., standing over the sink because sitting felt like wasting time. Ada's eyes narrowed. She had their mother's ability to detect lies, but she didn't push. Instead, she pulled Lina inside, chattering about her anatomy exam, a professor who'd praised her essay on cardiovascular pathology, a study group she joined. Lina listened, letting Ada's voice wash over her like medicine. This was why. This brightness, this future their parents had died believing Ada would have, this was worth every humiliation. "I made jollof rice," Ada said. "And I bought chicken. A whole chicken, sister." Lina's throat tightened. A whole chicken meant Ada had spent money they needed elsewhere. "That's wonderful." They ate together, and Lina watched her sister's hands, steady, precise, a future doctor's hands. Ada talked about patient case studies, her dream of specializing in pediatric cardiology. "I want to help children like Emeka," Ada said softly, referring to their cousin who died at 7 from a heart defect the family couldn't afford to treat. "So no mother watches her child die because of money." Lina's chest ached. "You will, Ada. I know you will." Ada's smile faltered. "Sister, about the tuition." "It's handled," Lina said quickly. Too quickly. Ada set down her fork. "Lina, don't lie to me. I saw the notice. 750,000 Nigerian nairas due in 6 weeks or I'm suspended." Her voice cracked. "That's more than we've ever had. Even with your 3 jobs." "I said it's handled." Silence fell between them, heavy with things unsaid. "How is the new job?" Ada asked, and Lina heard the real question. "Is it as bad as you're not telling me?" "It's fine. The family is wealthy but fair. The work is hard, but I'm learning. Learning how many ways a person can be made worthless. Learning how expensive silence is. Learning that some people find joy in breaking others." Ada studied her face, and Lina saw the moment Ada decided not to push, saw her sister protecting her the same way Lina protected Ada. Both drowning, trying to keep each other's heads above water. "Sister, if it's too much." "It's not," Lina interrupted. "Ada, listen. You're going to finish medical school. You're going to become a doctor. You're going to save lives. This is decided. The only question is whether you trust me." Ada's eyes filled. "I trust you. I just don't want you to kill yourself for me." Too late, Lina thought. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp. "Madam has special task. Do not be late. Mamare FEMA." Special tasks meant opportunities for infractions. "I have to go," Lina said, standing abruptly. "What?" "Sister, you just got here." "Work emergency." Lina kissed Ada's forehead. "Study hard. I'll send money for transportation." "With what? Your negative balance?" "Lina, wait." But Lina was already gone, unable to bear the concern in Ada's eyes. She made it down 2 flights before she had to sit, back against the wall, hands shaking. She pulled out her phone and opened her bank app. Current balance, 12,847 Nigerian nairas. Rent due in 12 days, 45,000 Nigerian nairas. Ada's tuition due in 6 weeks, 750,000 Nigerian nairas. The mathematics of impossibility. A memory surfaced. Her mother, the night before the accident, holding both daughters' hands. "Lina, promise me something. If anything happens to your father and me, you'll make sure Ada finishes school. She's special. She's going to do great things. Promise me." Lina had promised while holding her mother's hand. She'd promised again at the funeral. She'd promised every day since. Her phone buzzed. The university bursar's office. Reminder: Lina Nwoye, ID 2023 MED 0847. Outstanding balance 750,000 Nigerian nairas due October 15th. Failure to pay will result in immediate suspension and loss of clinical rotation placement. Final notice. October 15th. 6 weeks and 2 days. Another message from Margaret. Special task involves Madam's private study. Be extra careful. Cannot say more on text. The private study. Where the red ledger lived. Lina closed her eyes. For a moment, she let herself imagine telling Margaret everything she thought. Walking away. Finding Ada. Maybe going to their uncle in Ibadan. Starting over. But starting over required money they didn't have. And Ada only had one shot at medical school. There was no escape. Only forward, through whatever Margaret had planned. Lina stood and began the long walk back to the Blackwood estate. The taxi would cost 1,500 Nigerian nairas she no longer had. She walked for 2 hours through Lagos traffic, breathing exhaust and broken promises. By the time she reached the service entrance, it was dark. Margaret was waiting. "You came back." "I always come back." Margaret's expression was unreadable. "Lina, tomorrow. Madam has requested you handle her private collection. The Ming Dynasty pieces. She's never asked a new staff member before. Usually only patients, after 2 years." The trap was obvious. Impossible task plus fragile items plus Margaret watching equals entry 3. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I had a daughter once. She would have been your age." Margaret's voice was flat, emotion carefully extracted. "She died because I couldn't afford her medicine. I was working here. Making good money, I thought. But Madam Margaret's advances had me trapped. By the time I saved enough, it was too late." The confession hung between them. "So why do you stay?" "Because I have nowhere else." "But you still have choices. Leave tonight. Find another job. It might not pay as well, but you'll keep your dignity." 750,000 Nigerian nairas. 6 weeks. "I can't leave," Lina said softly. Margaret nodded as if she'd expected that answer. "Then tomorrow, remember, Margaret will be watching. She'll create distractions, anything to make you slip. Your only chance is absolute perfection. And if I achieve that, then she'll invent an infraction. Lina, you have to understand, she's decided you're a threat. That dignity you showed reminded the other staff they're human. Margaret can't allow that. She'll break you or remove you. Those are her only options. Then I'll find a third option." Margaret's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" Before Lina could answer, the service door burst open. Patience stood there, face pale with terror. "It's Blessing," Patience gasped. "She collapsed. We can't wake her." They ran. The staff quarters were chaos. Chidinma cradled Blessing's head, tears streaming. Blessing's lips were blue. On the floor, an empty bottle of sleeping pills. Next to it, a note in Blessing's handwriting: "I can't do this anymore. The debt. The fear. I'm sorry. Call an ambulance." Lina shouted, checking Blessing's pulse. Faint. Too slow. "We can't," Patience sobbed. "If Madam finds out. She's dying." Lina grabbed her phone, dialing emergency services, when it was yanked from her hand. Margaret Blackwood stood there in her evening gown, face a mixture of annoyance and cold calculation. "What," she said slowly, looking at Blessing's unconscious form, "is happening in my house?" The ambulance had taken Blessing away at 11:47 p.m. Margaret had watched from her bedroom window, arms crossed, face unreadable. She'd said nothing about the incident. She didn't need to. The message was clear: this is what happens when you break. Lina hadn't slept. She'd lain in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to Chidinma's muffled crying and Patience's whispered prayers. By morning, exhaustion sat heavy on her shoulders like a physical weight. At 5:55 a.m., Mama Efima appeared at the staff quarters door. "Lina. Madam's study. Now." The walk up 3 flights of stairs felt like climbing toward execution. Margaret's private study was a room Lina had only glimpsed through doorways, all dark wood, leather-bound books, and the particular silence that came with wealth so old it had stopped announcing itself. The door was already open. "You're late," Margaret said without looking up from her desk. "It's 6:02. "I'm sorry, Ma. Did I ask for excuses?" Margaret's voice was ice. "Clean this room. Every surface. Every corner. I'll be back in 30 minutes. If anything is out of place, that's entry 3. She stood, gathering files, then paused at the door. "And Lina? Don't touch my desk." The door closed. Lina stood frozen, her heart hammering. "Don't touch the desk." Which meant clean everything else perfectly while avoiding the one surface that dominated the room. She started with the bookshelves, her hands moving mechanically. Dust each spine. Wipe each shelf. Replace each book in exact position. Her mind kept circling back to Blessing's blue lips, the note, the debt that had crushed her. The debt. Lina moved to the windows, polishing glass that already gleamed. Margaret's voice echoed in her memory from days ago. "If you're struggling financially, I could advance you several months' salary. Reasonable interest rate. 30% monthly. Compounding. A trap disguised as rescue." She was wiping down a side table when she noticed it, Margaret's laptop, left open on the desk. The screen was still lit, showing a spreadsheet. "Don't touch the desk." Lina looked away, focusing on the table. But something about the numbers on that screen nagged at her peripheral vision. She'd learned to read financial documents working 3 jobs, processing receipts, tracking every naira. Those numbers looked wrong. She glanced at the door. Silence. Margaret had said 30 minutes. It had been maybe 10. "Don't touch the desk." But Lina's feet moved anyway, carrying her closer. Just close enough to see. The spreadsheet header read, "Household Operational Expenses, Q3 2024. Her eyes scanned the columns. Staff Welfare Program, 2,400,000 Nigerian nairas. Educational Development Fund, 1,800,000 Nigerian nairas. Medical Benefits, 950,000 Nigerian nairas. Facility Improvements, 3,200,000 Nigerian nairas. The numbers swam. That was over 8 million Nigerian nairas in just 1 quarter. For household expenses. But the staff quarters had broken bunks. No medical coverage. Blessing had been taking advances because there were no benefits. Lina's hands trembled. She pulled out her phone, glanced at the door again, and quickly photographed the screen. Her finger slipped. The camera sound was deafening in the silent room. She froze. Nothing. No footsteps in the hall. She took 2 more photos, capturing different sections of the spreadsheet, then backed away from the desk, her heart trying to break through her ribs. She returned to cleaning, but her mind was racing. 2.4 million Nigerian nairas for staff welfare. Where had it gone? Not to salaries. Those were always delayed. Not to quarters. She lived in the proof of that. Not to Blessing's medical care. Where? 15 minutes later, Margaret returned. She moved through the room slowly, inspecting, running fingers over surfaces, checking book spines with a small ruler. examining the windows at an angle to catch streaks. Lina stood perfectly still, hands clasped, eyes down. Margaret circled the desk, then stopped. Her eyes fixed on the laptop screen. The spreadsheet was still visible. Time stopped. "Did you touch my desk?" Margaret's voice was silk over a blade. "No, Ma." "Are you certain?" "Yes, Ma." Margaret's eyes narrowed. She lifted the laptop slightly, examining the surface beneath it, then set it down in the exact same position. "Interesting. Because I left a single grain of rice beneath this laptop. A test, you see, to know if anyone moved it." Lina's blood turned to ice. "And that grain of rice," Margaret continued, "is gone." "Ma, I didn't." "Are you calling me a liar?" Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. "I placed that rice there myself. Now it's gone. Which means someone moved my laptop. And there's only one person in this room besides me. I swear I didn't touch." "Enough." Margaret pulled out her phone, typed something, then looked at Lina with a smile that was worse than anger. "We'll let the security footage decide." Lina's stomach dropped. Security cameras. She'd been so focused on the door, she hadn't thought. "Follow me," Margaret commanded. They descended to the main floor, where Margaret led her into a small security room Lina had never entered. 3 monitors showed different angles of the house. Margaret typed commands into a computer, pulling up footage. There, Margaret's study, recorded from a camera hidden in the bookshelf. The footage showed Lina cleaning, moving to the bookshelves, the windows, then approaching the desk, standing there, pulling out her phone. "Well," Margaret said softly, "what do we have here?" "Ma, please. Not only did you lie about touching my desk, you photographed private documents." Margaret's smile widened. "That's corporate espionage, Lina. A criminal offense. I could call the police right now." I didn't mean." "What were you planning to do with those photos? Sell them to competitors? Blackmail me?" "No. The numbers didn't make sense." "The numbers?" Margaret's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering behind her eyes. "What business do you have understanding any numbers in this house?" Lina's mind raced. She'd revealed too much. "I think," Margaret said slowly, "we need to have a conversation with Mr. Blackwood about this. Theft of proprietary information is serious. Very serious." She pulled out her phone. "Wait," Lina said, desperation making her bold. "Please. Don't call him. I'll delete the photos right now. I'm sorry. I was just confused about." "About what?" Margaret's eyes were sharp as glass. Lina hesitated. This was dangerous territory. But something in those numbers, in Blessing's debt, in the missing welfare funds, something didn't add up. "About where the staff welfare money goes," Lina said quietly. "The spreadsheet showed millions allocated. But we don't receive benefits. The quarters are falling apart. Blessing took an advance because there's no medical coverage. Where did 2.4 million Nigerian nairas go?" The silence that followed was absolute. Margaret's face transformed, from predatory satisfaction to something Lina had never seen before. Fear. Just a flash, quickly buried, but unmistakable. "You ignorant girl," Margaret hissed. "You have no idea what you're looking at. Those are complex accounting procedures you couldn't possibly understand. Then explain it to me." The words were out before Lina could stop them. Margaret's hand moved so fast Lina barely saw it. The slap sent her stumbling backward into the wall, her cheek exploding in pain. "How dare you?" Margaret whispered, her composure cracking. "How dare you question me in my own house?" Lina touched her burning cheek, tasting blood from her split lip. "You want to know about those numbers?" Margaret's voice was shaking now, with rage or fear, Lina couldn't tell. Those funds are allocated properly, processed through proper channels. If you're suggesting otherwise, you're accusing me of theft, of fraud. I'm not accusing. Yes, you are. Margaret pulled out her phone again. And now I have no choice. I'm calling Richard. And the police. You've crossed a line you can't uncross. Lina's mind went blank with panic. Police meant jail. Meant losing everything. Meant Ada's tuition disappearing forever. Please, Lina whispered. Please don't. I'll do anything. Margaret paused, finger hovering over her phone. That dangerous smile returned. Anything. Yes. Delete those photos. Now. In front of me. Lina pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Opened her photo gallery. The 3 images were there, spreadsheets showing millions in allocated funds. She hesitated. Now, Margaret commanded. Lina's finger hovered over delete. These photos were evidence of something. She didn't fully understand what, but something was wrong. Blessing's debt. The missing benefits. The millions that disappeared. I'm waiting, Margaret said, phone still in hand. If Lina deleted them, the evidence was gone. If she didn't, Margaret would call the police. 750,000 Nigerian nairas. 6 weeks. Ada's future. Lina pressed delete. The photos vanished. All of them, Margaret said. Recently deleted folder 2. Lina opened the folder, permanently deleted the images. Margaret watched, then finally lowered her phone. Good. Now then. Since you've demonstrated such interest in my private affairs, I think we need new arrangements. She pulled out her red leather ledger from her purse, opened it. Entry 3, Margaret said, writing slowly. Theft of proprietary information. Corporate espionage. Lying to employer. She snapped the book shut. You're dismissed, Lina. Effective immediately. No reference. And I'll be making sure every household in Lagos knows exactly why. The room tilted. Ma, please. Get out of my house. My sister, her tuition, I need this job. You should have thought of that before you tried to spy on me. Margaret's voice was final. Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to collect your things. She turned and walked away, heels clicking on marble. Lina stood frozen, her entire world collapsing. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't leave yet. I saw what you saw. Meet me at service entrance. 15 minutes. Come alone. C. Chidi. Richard's personal assistant. Lina stared at the message, her dismissed future on one side, and on the other, what? Hope. Another trap? The security guard was already approaching. She had seconds to decide. Lina had exactly 12 minutes before security would forcibly remove her from the Blackwood estate. She moved through the corridors like a ghost, her dismissed future trailing behind her like a shadow. The service entrance was empty when she arrived. Rain had started, typical Lagos rain that came without warning and turned streets into rivers. She stood under the small overhang, watching water sheet off the roof, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. Chidi Okafor was not what Lina expected. Late 20s, sharp suit despite the early hour, eyes that missed nothing. Richard's personal assistant. The kind of man who knew where bodies were buried because he'd helped dig the holes. You came, he said. Not a question. You saw the spreadsheet, Lina replied. I've seen many spreadsheets. Chidi glanced around, then pulled her deeper into the alcove. Walk with me. We don't have much time. They moved through the service corridors, Chidi's pace quick and purposeful. He led her to a storage room filled with old furniture and broken appliances, the kind of place nobody visited. 3 years, Chidi said, closing the door. I've worked for Mr. Blackwood for 3 years. And for 2 of those years, I've suspected his wife is running a fraud scheme. Lina's breath caught. You know. I know the numbers don't match. The Blackwood Foundation, Richard's charity for educational scholarships, receives 15 million Nigerian nairas quarterly from corporate profits. But the actual scholarships distributed? Maybe 4 million Nigerian nairas. The rest supposedly goes to administrative costs and program development. His voice was bitter. Costs that Margaret personally oversees. Where does it go? That's what I've been trying to find out. But Margaret controls the household accounts. She has access to foundation records through her position on the board. And she's careful. Very careful. He paused. Until today. The spreadsheet I photographed. Which you deleted. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. She was calling the police. I know. I watched the security feed. Chidi pulled out his phone. But Margaret doesn't know I have administrative access to the security system. I downloaded the footage before she could wipe it, including clear shots of that spreadsheet on her screen. Hope flared in Lina's chest. So you have evidence. I have fragments. Screenshots. Suspicious patterns. But nothing concrete enough to take to Richard without Margaret destroying me first. He looked at her directly. But you saw something in those numbers. Something that made you risk everything. What was it? Lina thought of Blessing's blue lips. The staff welfare allocation. 2.4 million Nigerian nairas quarterly. But there are no benefits. No medical coverage. The quarters are falling apart. Where did that money go? Chidi's expression darkened. That's the piece I've been missing. The foundation fraud is one thing, but if she's also stealing from household operational budgets, creating false allocations. He typed rapidly on his phone. That's a pattern. Multiple sources, same destination. Her personal accounts. Offshore. Untraceable. At least, that's my theory. He showed Lina his phone, a complex spreadsheet of his own, tracking discrepancies over months. But I need proof. Real documentation. Bank transfers. Something that connects Margaret directly to the missing funds. She just fired me, Lina said quietly. I can't get you anything. Maybe not. Chidi's eyes gleamed. But you did something nobody else has done in 3 years. You made her panic. Did you see her face when you questioned those numbers? That wasn't anger. That was fear. Fear that I'd expose her. Fear that others would start asking questions. Chidi leaned closer. Lina, Margaret's power comes from isolation. She keeps staff terrified and separate. Nobody talks. Nobody compares notes. Nobody realizes they're all being exploited in the same way. But you spoke up in that laundry room. You showed the others that silence isn't mandatory. And got myself fired. Maybe. Or maybe you started something she can't stop. He pulled out a small USB drive. I need you to do something for me. Something dangerous. Before Lina could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Chidi grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a stack of furniture. They crouched in the darkness as the door opened. Told you, I saw someone come this way. Patience's voice, hushed and urgent. Are you sure? Chidinma. Yes. I think it was Lina. The door closed. Lina heard them moving closer. It's okay, Chidi whispered. They're safe. He stood, revealing their position. Patience and Chidinma froze. Mr. Okafor, Patience said, eyes wide. Relax. We're all on the same side. Chidi gestured to Lina. Tell them. Lina stepped forward. Chidi thinks Margaret is stealing from the foundation. And from household budgets. The staff welfare money, it's supposed to exist. But we never see it, Patience finished. Her expression shifted from fear to something harder. I've been here 4 years. Not once have we received the benefits listed in our contracts. Medical coverage? Doesn't exist. Educational assistance? A lie. Even our base salaries are always delayed while Margaret claims everything is processed correctly. Chidinma's hands clenched. She took 50,000 Nigerian nairas from my last paycheck. Called it a breakage fee for a glass I never broke. When I questioned it, she threatened entry too. It's systematic, Chidi said. She's been doing this for years. Small amounts from each staff member. Larger amounts from the foundation. It adds up to millions. But how do we prove it? Lina asked. That's where you come in. Chidi held up the USB drive. Tonight, Margaret hosts her monthly charity committee meeting. Major donors, foundation board members, Richard. She'll be occupied for at least 2 hours. Her study will be empty. Lina's stomach dropped. You want me to break in? I want you to plug this drive into her computer. It has software that will copy her hard drive, emails, documents, everything, including her real financial records. I'm fired. Security will stop me before I reach the main house. Not if you never left. Patience spoke up. I can hide you in the laundry room. Margaret thinks you're gone, but you're still in the building. And I can disable the study security camera, Chidi added. Give you a 15-minute window. But you have to move fast. Lina looked between them. If I'm caught. Prison, Chidi said bluntly. Margaret will absolutely press charges. Breaking and entering. Theft. Corporate espionage. She'll bury you. And if I don't do it? She wins. Blessing sacrifice meant nothing. Ada's tuition stays unpaid. And Margaret continues destroying people until someone finally stops her. The weight of it pressed down on Lina's shoulders. I'll help, Patience said quietly. I'm already at entry 2. I have nothing left to lose. Me too, Chidinma added. For Blessing. Chidi checked his watch. Meeting starts at 7 p.m. That gives us 12 hours to prepare. Lina, are you in? Lina thought of her mother's voice. Promise me you'll make sure Ada finishes school. She thought of Blessing's note. I can't do this anymore. She thought of Margaret's smile. You'll either be broken or dismissed. I'm in, Lina said. But I have conditions. Name them. If we get evidence, we don't just expose Margaret. We make sure every staff member she's stolen from gets their money back. And we make sure she can never do this to anyone else. Chidi extended his hand. Deal. They shook. Now then, Chidi said, his expression turning serious. Let's talk about what happens if this goes wrong. Because Margaret doesn't just destroy careers. She destroys lives. And once you walk into that study tonight, there's no turning back. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the roof like a countdown. Lina's phone buzzed. A text from Ada. Sister, I just got an email from the bursar. They're threatening suspension next week if payment doesn't come. Please tell me we have the money. Lina stared at the message. I need to make a call, she said. I need to tell my sister. No. Chidi's voice was firm. No calls. No texts. Nothing that can be traced or monitored. Margaret has access to household Wi-Fi logs. If she suspects anything, she'll check communication records. But Ada has to wait. I'm sorry, but operational security comes first. Lina's chest tightened. Ada was probably sitting in their apartment right now, staring at that email, wondering why her sister wasn't responding. 12 hours, Chidi continued. We prepare. At 6:45 p.m., Patience hides you. At 7 o'clock, Margaret's meeting starts. At 7:15, I kill the camera. You have until 7:30 to get in, plug in the drive, and get out. Understood. They all nodded. Good. Now scatter. Act normal. If Margaret suspects. The storage room door suddenly crashed open. Margaret stood there, flanked by 2 security guards. Her eyes locked onto Lina with venomous satisfaction. "Did you really think," Margaret said softly, "that I don't monitor my own security system? That I wouldn't see you sneaking around my house after I dismissed you?" She held up her phone, showing footage of Lina and Chidi entering the storage room. "And you," she continued, turning to Chidi. "Richard's trusted assistant, conspiring with dismissed staff. How disappointing." Chidi's face went pale. "Take them," Margaret commanded the guards. "All of them. I want them held until the police arrive. Breaking and entering. Conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. Attempted theft." The guards moved forward. Lina's mind raced. This was it. Game over. Prison. Ada's future destroyed. Then Chidi did something unexpected. He smiled. "Actually, Mrs. Blackwood," he said calmly, pulling out his phone, "I think you're going to want to reconsider. Because the footage you just showed? I sent it to someone. Someone who's very interested in why you're so desperate to silence your staff." Margaret's expression flickered. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Chidi's finger hovered over his phone. "One call. That's all it takes. And everything comes out. The foundation fraud. The stolen wages. All of it. You have no evidence." "Don't I?" Chidi's smile widened. "Try me." The standoff stretched. Margaret's hand trembled slightly on her phone. Then Lina's phone rang, shattering the silence. Richard Blackwood's name flashed on the screen. Everyone froze. Margaret's face went white. "Answer it," Margaret whispered. "On speaker." Lina's hand shook as she pressed accept and speaker. "Lina Nwoye." Richard's voice was cold, professional. "This is Richard Blackwood. I need you in my office immediately. And bring Chidi. We need to discuss some very interesting financial documents that just appeared in my email." The line went dead. Margaret stared at Chidi, understanding and fury warring on her face. "What did you do?" she whispered. Chidi's smile never wavered. "I told you. I sent the footage. Along with every suspicious transaction I've documented over 3 years. To the one person whose opinion actually matters. He'll never believe. He's asking questions. That's all I needed." The security guards looked uncertainly between Margaret and Chidi, unsure who to obey. One of them said. "What do you want us to?" "Get out," Margaret hissed. "All of you. Out." They scattered. Margaret stood alone, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. "You have no idea what you've done," she said to Lina, her voice shaking. "No idea what's coming for you." Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking rapidly, desperately, down the corridor. Lina looked at Chidi. "What just happened?" "I gambled," Chidi said, his hands finally showing a tremor. "I sent Richard a partial summary. Enough to raise questions. Not enough to prove anything. And if he sides with Margaret, then we're all finished. Mr. Okafor." A shout from down the corridor. One of Richard's other assistants appeared, breathless. "Sir, Mr. Blackwood says now. His office. Both of you." "His," the assistant paused, lowering his voice. "He's furious." Chidi and Lina exchanged glances. "Together?" Lina asked. "Together," Chidi confirmed. They walked toward Richard's office, toward whatever judgment awaited, while somewhere above them, Margaret Blackwood was making phone calls of her own. The war had begun, and nobody knew who would survive it. Richard Blackwood's office occupied the entire top floor of the East Wing, a space designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Victoria Island, leather furniture the color of old money, and a desk that could double as a small aircraft carrier. Richard stood with his back to them, hands clasped behind him, staring out at Lagos sprawling below. He didn't turn when they entered. "Close the door," he said. Chidi obeyed. The click of the latch sounded final. Silence stretched. Lina's heart hammered so hard she thought Richard might hear it. "I received an email this morning," Richard finally said, his voice eerily calm. "From my personal assistant. Containing allegations about my wife. About my foundation. About financial irregularities spanning 3 years." He turned slowly. "Would either of you like to explain?" His face was unreadable, the same controlled expression he wore during business meetings, when millions hung in the balance. Chidi stepped forward. "Sir, I've been documenting discrepancies." "Discrepancies?" Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. "You've been spying on my wife. Accessing private household accounts. Sharing confidential information with dismissed staff." His eyes cut to Lina. "And you. Breaking into restricted areas. Photographing private documents. Conspiracy." "Mr. Blackwood, if you'll just look at the evidence," Chidi started. "Evidence?" Richard's composure cracked slightly. "You sent me spreadsheet screenshots and vague accusations. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to believe? That my wife, a woman from one of Lagos's oldest families, a Harvard graduate, a philanthropist, is embezzling from her own household?" "Yes," Lina said quietly. Richard's attention snapped to her. "Excuse me?" "Yes, sir. That's exactly what we're saying." Lina's voice steadied. "Your wife has been stealing from the Blackwood Foundation. From household budgets. From staff wages. For years. And you base this on what? A spreadsheet you saw for 30 seconds. "I base it on blessing Adelik attempting suicide because of debt your wife trapped her in," Lina said, anger overriding fear. "I base it on staff welfare funds that don't exist. Medical benefits that are lies. On watching women work themselves to exhaustion for salaries that are always delayed, always short, always accompanied by mysterious fines." Richard's jaw tightened. "Those are operational matters Margaret handles. I trust her judgment." "Then you're either blind or complicit," Lina snapped. The room went deathly silent. Chidi's face paled. "Lina." "No." Lina stepped forward. "I've lost everything already. My job. My sister's tuition. My future. So I'm going to tell Mr. Blackwood the truth, even if he doesn't want to hear it." She locked eyes with Richard. "Your wife is a thief. And you've been so absent, so focused on your empire, that you never noticed the smaller empire she was building on the backs of desperate people." Richard's expression was stone. "Get out." "Sir, please," Chidi tried. "Both of you. Out. Before I call security." "Mr. Blackwood," Chidi said desperately, "give me 1 week. Let me compile complete evidence. If I can't prove it, I'll resign. But if I can..." "If you can, you'll have destroyed my marriage based on the word of a dismissed maid and circumstantial evidence." Richard's voice was ice. "The answer is no." "Then you're condemning everyone in this house to continue suffering," Lina said. Richard moved so fast Lina barely saw it. He grabbed a folder from his desk and threw it at her feet. Papers scattered. "You want to talk about suffering?" Richard's voice shook. "That's the background check I ran on you this morning. Orphaned at 21. Sister in medical school you can't afford. 3 jobs barely covering rent. You think I don't see what this is? A dismissed employee trying to extort money by making accusations she can't prove." Lina stared at the papers, her whole life reduced to data points. "I'm offering you a choice," Richard continued. "Take 500,000 Nigerian nairas. Sign an NDA. Disappear. Or I prosecute you for trespassing, corporate espionage, and attempted blackmail. Prison or money." Decide now. The offer hung in the air like poison. 500,000 Nigerian nairas. Enough for Ada's tuition. Enough to save everything. All she had to do was let Margaret win. Lina looked at the scattered papers, at her life summarized in cold facts, and felt something break inside her. Not her spirit, her fear. Keep your money, she said quietly. And when your wife's fraud eventually surfaces, and it will, remember this moment. Remember that people tried to warn you, and you chose her over the truth. She turned toward the door. Lina, wait, Chidi started. Mr. Okafor stays, Richard commanded. He works for me. You don't. Lina left, each step feeling like walking through water. Behind her, she heard Richard's voice, low and threatening, tearing into Chidi. The hallway seemed endless. She made it to the stairs before her legs gave out. She sat on the top step, head in hands, trying to process the magnitude of her failure. Her phone buzzed. Ada, sister, please. The bursar sent another email. They need payment by Monday or I'm out. Please tell me you have it. Monday. 3 days away. Lina typed, I'm sorry. I don't have it. I'm so sorry. Before she could send, footsteps approached. She looked up. Margaret stood there, perfectly composed, holding a silver tea tray. Still here. Margaret's smile was venomous. I thought Richard would have thrown you out by now. He did. Good. Margaret glanced at the tea tray. Well, since you're here anyway, you might as well be useful. Richard requested Earl Grey in his study. Deliver this. Consider it your final task before security escorts you out. She thrust the tray at Lina. Lina stared at it. I'm not your maid anymore. No. But you're still in my house. And I'm asking nicely. Unless you'd prefer I call security now. Lina took the tray, her hands trembling with suppressed rage. That's better, Margaret purred. His private study. 3rd floor, West Wing. You remember where that is, don't you? Where all this unpleasantness started. Lina climbed the stairs, the tea service rattling softly. The West Wing was quieter, more isolated. Margaret's territory. The study door was slightly ajar. Lina pushed it open with her shoulder. The room looked different in afternoon light, less threatening, almost peaceful. And there, on a pedestal near the window, sat the Ming Dynasty vase Margaret had mentioned days ago. Blue and white porcelain, impossibly delicate, probably worth more than Lina would earn in a lifetime. It was positioned at the very edge of the pedestal, teetering slightly. Wrong. That was wrong. Margaret would never leave something so valuable in such a precarious position. Unless. Lina set the tea tray on the desk and moved toward the vase, intending to push it to safety. Don't touch that. Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. She appeared in the doorway, face flushed, eyes wild. It's going to fall. Step away from it. Now. Lina froze. Something was very wrong. Margaret's composure was completely gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. Mrs. Blackwood, the vase is. Margaret moved into the room, closing the door behind her. I said step away. Lina backed up, hands raised. I don't understand. Of course you don't. Margaret's laugh was brittle. You think you're so clever. But you have no idea what you've done, coming here today. Talking to Richard. Putting ideas in his head. I only told him the truth. Your truth. Your poverty-stricken, desperate truth. Margaret circled closer. But here's my truth, Lina. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let a maid destroy everything. She lunged. Lina tried to dodge, but Margaret was faster, driven by desperation. She grabbed Lina's arm and yanked her forward, directly toward the vase. Lina's hip struck the pedestal. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The pedestal wobbled. The vase tilted. Lina's hand shot out, trying to catch it, but Margaret's grip held her at the wrong angle. The vase tumbled. Porcelain shattered across marble with a sound like bones breaking. Lina stared at the fragments, at hundreds of thousands of naira destroyed in seconds. "No," she whispered. "No, you pushed me." Margaret released her arm, stumbling backward, her face transforming from rage to theatrical shock. "What have you done?" Margaret's voice rose to a shriek. That vase was priceless. "Richard! Security! Someone help! You pushed me!" Lina shouted. "You deliberately! I witnessed you stumble into it." Margaret pulled out her phone. "Richard, come quickly. The new maid, the one you just fired, she's destroyed the Ming vase." Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Security burst in, followed moments later by Richard and Chidi. Richard stopped dead, staring at the shattered porcelain. "I came to check on her," Margaret said, her voice shaking perfectly. "I wanted to make sure she was leaving peacefully. But she was in here, touching the vase, and when I asked her to stop, Margaret's voice broke. She knocked it over. On purpose. Out of spite." "That's a lie." Lina turned to Richard. "She pushed me into it. She set this whole thing up." "There are no cameras in this room," Margaret said coldly. "It's my private study. But there are witnesses who saw you enter here alone, carrying a tea tray you had no authorization to deliver." Lina looked at Chidi, desperate. "You know she's lying. You know what she's capable of." But Chidi's face was ashen. He'd just received his own warning from Richard. Speaking up now would cost him everything. "That vase," Richard said quietly, his voice devoid of emotion, "was purchased at auction for $287,000. It was a gift from my late father." "Sir, I didn't. She pushed me." "Enough." Richard pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. Destruction of property. Trespassing. This has gone far enough." "Richard, please," Margaret touched his arm, her performance flawless. "Perhaps we don't need to involve the authorities. The girl is clearly disturbed. Maybe psychiatric evaluation." "No," Richard said. "She made her choice. She refused my settlement. Now she faces the consequences." He dialed. Lina's world tilted. Prison. Criminal record. Ada's future destroyed. All because she tried to do the right thing. "Wait," Chidi said suddenly. "Mr. Blackwood, before you make that call, there's something you should know." Richard paused, finger hovering over send. "This study," Chidi continued carefully, "doesn't have Margaret's usual security cameras. But it does have something else. Something installed after the break-in attempt last year." Margaret's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "The motion-activated recording system," Chidi said. "Hidden in the ventilation. It activates whenever someone enters the room. For security purposes." He pulled out his phone, navigating to a security app Richard didn't know existed. "I believe," Chidi said quietly, "that we'll find very interesting footage from the last 10 minutes." The room went absolutely silent. Margaret's mask finally, completely shattered. "You're bluffing," she whispered. Chidi pressed play. And there, on his phone screen, crystal clear, Margaret positioning the vase at the pedestal's edge. Margaret hiding behind the door. Margaret lunging at Lina. Margaret deliberately pushing her into the priceless porcelain. Richard watched the footage 3 times. When he finally looked up, his face was a stranger's, cold, distant, and absolutely furious. "Margaret," he said softly. "My office. Now." "Richard, I can explain." "Now." Margaret flinched. Then, with whatever dignity she had left, she walked out. Richard followed, leaving Lina and Chidi alone in the destroyed study. Lina's legs gave out. She sank to the floor among the porcelain fragments. "How?" she whispered. "How did you know about the recording system?" Chidi's hands were shaking. "I didn't. I gambled. Again." "You lied about the cameras." "I lied about the cameras." He showed her his phone. The footage playing was from the hallway security camera, angled just enough to catch Margaret's silhouette entering the study before Lina. Not proof of the push, but proof of premeditation. "But I have something better. I set up my own camera. This morning. In the bookshelf. Just in case." He showed her the real footage, crystal clear, damning, irrefutable. "We have her," Lina breathed. "We have one incident," Chidi corrected. "She'll lawyer up. Claim it was an accident. Claim the camera was installed illegally. This isn't over, Lina. It's just beginning." From down the hall, Margaret's voice rose in furious denial, Richard's voice cutting through her protests like steel. Lina's phone buzzed. "Ada, sister, I know you said you don't have it. But I believe in you. You always find a way. I love you." Lina stared at the message, tears finally breaking free. "Chidi," she said. "Whatever happens next, I need a promise." "What?" "If this goes wrong. If Margaret wins. If I end up in prison." She looked at him. "Make sure Ada's tuition gets paid. I don't care how. Just make sure." Chidi studied her face, then nodded. "You have my word." Somewhere above them, Margaret's world was ending. But Lina's war was just beginning. The Blackwood Foundation annual gala was scheduled for that evening, a fact everyone had forgotten in the chaos of shattered porcelain and shattered lies. 200 guests. Politicians, business moguls, international philanthropists. All gathering to celebrate the Foundation's transformative work in educational access. Margaret had 3 hours to salvage everything. Lina watched from the staff quarters window as black SUVs and luxury sedans began arriving. Drivers in pristine uniforms. Women in gowns that cost more than yearly rent. Men whose watches could fund a university degree. "You shouldn't be here," Mama Efima said quietly, appearing beside her. "Margaret will use the gala as a weapon. She always does." "I know." Lina's voice was hollow. "But Richard told me to stay. Until he decides what to do." After the study incident, Richard had locked himself in his office with Margaret for 2 hours. Raised voices. Something breaking. Then silence. When they emerged, Richard's face was granite. Margaret's was a mask poorly reconstructed. Richard had pulled Chidi aside. "Keep Lina on property. Don't let her leave. Don't let my wife near her. And get me every piece of evidence you've compiled. Tonight." Now, as twilight painted Lagos in shades of gold and shadow, the estate transformed. Fairy lights in the gardens. A string quartet tuning instruments. Catering staff moving like synchronized dancers through the main house. And Margaret, dressed in a blood-red gown, playing the perfect hostess as if her world wasn't disintegrating. "She's terrifying," Patience whispered, joining them at the window. "Look at her. Smiling. Greeting guests. Like nothing happened." "That's how she survived this long," Chidi said, appearing in the doorway. "Performance. She's been performing for Richard for years. Playing the devoted wife while robbing him blind." "Has he looked at the evidence yet?" Lina asked. "He's reviewing it now." Chidi's expression was grim. "But Margaret's been in his ear for hours. Damage control. Telling her version. Claiming you staged everything to extort money. Will he believe her?" "I don't know. Richard built his empire on instinct and calculation. But Margaret's been his blind spot for a decade. Love does that to people. Makes them ignore what's right in front of them." A bell chimed. The gala was beginning. "Stay here," Chidi commanded. "Stay quiet. Stay hidden." But 30 minutes later, everything changed. A junior staff member burst into the quarters, breathless. Lina Nwoye. Madam Margaret requests your presence. Main ballroom. Immediately. Absolutely not, Chidi said. She's not going anywhere near. Madam said to tell you, either Lina comes voluntarily, or security will bring her in front of all the guests. Your choice. Lina's blood went cold. She's going to make a spectacle. Then we don't give her the satisfaction, Chidi argued. We refuse. And she has security drag me through a ballroom full of Lagos's elite? That's worse. Lina stood. If she wants theatre, I'll give her theatre. Lina. I'm not hiding anymore. Lina's voice was steel. Whatever she does, let witnesses see it. Let them see exactly who Margaret Blackwood is. Mama Ifema handed her a clean uniform. Then look presentable. Don't give her ammunition. Lina changed quickly, braided her hair, straightened her spine. When she looked in the mirror, she saw her mother's eyes staring back, determined, unbreakable. The walk to the ballroom felt like walking to execution. Crystal chandeliers. Marble floors. Walls covered in art worth millions. And everywhere, people in evening wear, champagne glasses catching light, conversations floating on perfume and privilege. The string quartet stopped playing as Lina entered. Conversations died. 200 faces turned. And there, at the center of the ballroom on a raised platform, stood Margaret Blackwood, microphone in hand, spotlight painting her in dramatic chiaroscuro. Ah, Margaret said, her voice amplified through speakers. Here she is. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to someone. This is Lina Nwoye. She worked in our household for exactly 14 days before. Margaret paused for effect. Before destroying a Ming Dynasty vase worth $287,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lina's hands clenched. This was the trap. Public humiliation in front of witnesses who would believe Margaret's version without question. Now, Margaret continued, her voice dripping full sympathy, I understand desperate people do desperate things. Ms. Nwoye here has a sister in medical school. Tuition is expensive. When I offered her a settlement to simply resign and move on, she refused. Instead, she attempted to extort me, to threaten exposure of false allegations unless I paid her. That's not true, Lina said quietly. Speak up, Margaret commanded. These people can't hear you. I said that's not true. Lina's voice rang out. Margaret smiled. Of course you'd say that. But the evidence speaks for itself. Illegal photographs of private documents. Conspiracy with my husband's assistant. And finally, violent destruction of priceless property. She gestured, and 2 security guards wheeled in a covered platform. Margaret dramatically pulled off the cloth, revealing the shattered vase, carefully arranged in a display case like a crime scene exhibit. The crowd murmured. This, Margaret said, is what happens when we show too much kindness to people who don't appreciate it. When we open our homes and our hearts, only to be betrayed. Richard stood near the back of the room, face unreadable. Chidi beside him, phone in hand, waiting for a signal. So tonight, Margaret continued, I'm offering Ms. Nwoye one final opportunity. Kneel. Apologize to my guests for disrupting this charitable evening. Admit your actions. And I'll consider not pressing criminal charges. The ballroom went absolutely silent. Lina felt every eye on her. She saw the calculation in their gazes, the instant judgment, the assumption of guilt based solely on her worn uniform versus Margaret's designer gown. Well. Margaret's voice was silk and venom. Will you kneel? Lina looked at the sea of faces. Politicians who passed laws affecting millions while sipping champagne. Business leaders who built fortunes on others' labor. Philanthropists who funded charities while their own staff went hungry. And Margaret, standing above them all, certain of her power, certain of her victory. No, Lina said clearly. Margaret's smile froze. Excuse me. I will not kneel. Lina's voice grew stronger. I will apologize for mistakes I make. I will take responsibility for my actions. But I will not kneel for doing my job. I will not confess to crimes I didn't commit. And I will not let you rewrite the truth to protect your lies. The murmuring intensified. Some guests looked uncomfortable now, sensing something beneath the performance. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. You're refusing? In front of all these witnesses. I'm refusing in front of witnesses because they need to see who you really are. Lina stepped forward. You didn't bring me here to apologize. You brought me here to break me publicly. To make an example. To show your staff and your husband and everyone in this room that you're untouchable. How dare you? But you're not untouchable, Mrs. Blackwood. You're a thief who's been stealing from your husband's foundation for years. Who's been embezzling staff wages. Who trapped Blessing Adelique in so much debt she tried to kill herself. Gasps erupted. Several guests pulled out phones. Margaret's face went white, then red. These are slanders. Lies from a bitter, dismissed employee. Then show them the proof, Lina challenged. Show them the real household expense reports. The staff welfare budgets that disappeared. The foundation accounts with millions unaccounted for. I don't have to prove anything to you. No, a new voice cut through the chaos. Richard stepped forward, phone in hand. But you have to prove it to me. Margaret froze. Richard. I've spent the last 3 hours reviewing evidence, Richard said, his voice carrying weight that made even the most powerful guests fall silent. Financial records. Security footage. Staff testimonies. And I have questions, Margaret. Very serious questions. Whatever that maid told you. It wasn't just her. Richard looked at his wife like she was a stranger. Chidi found irregularities dating back 5 years. The forensic accountant I hired this afternoon found offshore accounts in your name. And the security footage, he held up his phone. The footage shows you deliberately staging that vase destruction. He pressed play. The video played on the ballroom's projection screens, crystal clear, damning, irrefutable. The room exploded. Margaret staggered backward, her mask finally shattering completely. Richard, you don't understand. I can explain. Explain what? How you stole 4.7 million Nigerian nairas from my foundation. How you embezzled household budgets. How you systematically exploited vulnerable women. I did it for us. Margaret's voice cracked. For our lifestyle. Your precious company doesn't generate what people think. The foundation doesn't fund itself. Someone had to make difficult choices. You chose to steal. I chose to survive. Margaret was unraveling now, years of performance collapsing. You think old money lasts forever? My family was broke, Richard. Broke. The name, the pedigree, all illusion. I married you to save myself. And when I realized your company was struggling, that the foundation was bleeding us dry, I took action. I found additional revenue streams. By stealing from educational scholarships meant for poor students, Richard said coldly. By being practical. Margaret shrieked. Those students would have wasted the money anyway. At least I put it to good use maintaining our position, our reputation. Our lie, Richard finished. Margaret looked around the ballroom at 200 horrified faces. Her peers. Her social circle. Her world. All watching her destroy herself. You'll regret this, Margaret whispered to Lina. All of you. I'll sue. I'll fight. I'll make you wish you'd stayed silent. No, Richard said quietly. You won't. Because I'm calling the police. And every person in this room is a witness. He pulled out his phone. Margaret lunged, not at Richard, but at Lina. This is your fault. You destroyed everything. Security grabbed her before she made contact, but her face was pure hatred. I had a system. Margaret screamed as they held her. It worked. Everyone knew their place. But you just had to speak. Had to question. Had to ruin everything with your pathetic dignity. Richard made the call. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The guests began leaving in a stampede of designer gowns and uncomfortable silence. A scandal was entertaining from a distance. Up close, it required involvement they didn't want. Within minutes, the ballroom emptied. Police arrived. Statements were taken. Margaret was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about lawyers and lawsuits and how Richard would regret this. When the chaos finally subsided, only a handful of people remained. Richard, Chidi, Lina, Mamarifima, Patience, and Chidinma. Richard looked at Lina for a long moment. I owe you an apology, he said finally. I chose comfort over truth. Chose my wife's version because believing it was easier than facing reality. People suffered because of my willful blindness. Sir. No. Let me finish. Richard's voice was heavy with something Lina had never heard from him before, genuine emotion. The foundation will be audited. Every penny Margaret stole will be accounted for and restored. Staff who were exploited will receive full back pay, compensation, and benefits. And you, he looked at Lina. You saved more than just money. You saved my integrity. What do you want? Lina thought of her mother's promise. Of Ada waiting for news about tuition. Of Blessing in a hospital somewhere, fighting to survive. I want my sister's tuition paid. I want Blessing's medical care covered. I want every staff member Margaret hurt to be made whole. She paused. And I want a job. You have it, Richard said without hesitation. Head of the new Workers' Advocacy Office. I'm creating it tonight. Full salary, benefits, and authority to investigate any future complaints. Someone needs to make sure this never happens again. Tears finally broke free. Thank you. Richard nodded, then turned to leave. He paused at the door. Lina, that moment in the laundry room, when you said I am someone, that took more courage than anything I've done in 20 years of business. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that. He left. Chidi exhaled slowly. Well, that happened. Is it really over? Chidinma asked quietly. The arrests are over, Chidi said. But Margaret has lawyers. Family money, even if it's less than she claimed. This becomes a legal battle now. Could take months. Years, even. But we have evidence, Patience said. We have evidence she'll try to suppress, discredit, or explain away. Chidi looked at Lina. Are you ready for that? 4 depositions and court appearances and her lawyers tearing apart every aspect of your life. Lina thought of Ada. Of Blessing. Of all the women Margaret had broken. I'm ready. Her phone buzzed. But it wasn't Ada. It was an unknown number. This isn't over. I have friends. Powerful friends. And they're coming for you. You should have taken the money. Lina stared at the message, ice flooding her veins. Chidi. She showed him the phone. His face went pale. She's texting from police custody. That's not supposed to be possible unless her powerful friends are already working. Mamarifima finished grimly. I told you. People like Margaret don't fall easily. They have networks. Protection. Another text. Check your sister's university portal. Now. Lina's hands shook as she logged into Ada's student account. There, in red letters, student status, suspended for academic misconduct. Plagiarism investigation pending. All privileges revoked. No. Lina's voice broke. No, no, no. Ada doesn't cheat. She would never. It's fabricated, Chidi said urgently. Margaret must have someone at the university. Another message. Still think you won? I can destroy your sister's future with a phone call. Drop the charges. Recant your testimony. Or Ada's medical career ends before it begins. The phone slipped from Lina's fingers. Margaret was in custody. But her war was far from over. And now she declared Ada collateral damage. The forensic audit took 72 hours. 3 days during which Lina barely slept, couldn't eat, and watched helplessly as Margaret's lawyers worked to destroy Ada's future from inside a police cell. Richard had hired Ernst & Young's top forensic accounting team. 6 people descended on the Blackwood estate with laptops, subpoenas, and the kind of methodical precision that turned lies into numbers. Lina spent those 3 days fighting a different battle, trying to prove Ada's innocence to a university administration suddenly deaf to reason. Every call went to voicemail. Every email received automated responses. Margaret's influence ran deeper than anyone had imagined. On the morning of the 4th day, Richard summoned everyone to his office. Lina, Chidi, the lead forensic accountant Dr. Amaka Okonjo, and 2 lawyers whose hourly rates could fund a semester's tuition. Before we begin, Richard said, his voice carrying the weight of sleepless nights, I want to say something. I built Blackwood Industries on the principle of integrity. I thought I'd built my life the same way. I was wrong. He gestured to Dr. Okonjo, a woman in her 50s with silver locks and eyes that had seen every kind of financial deception. Tell them, Richard said. Dr. Okonjo opened her laptop. In 30 years of forensic accounting, I've investigated fraud in multinational corporations, government agencies, and criminal enterprises. What Margaret Blackwood accomplished is actually impressive from a technical standpoint, which makes it morally reprehensible. She displayed a spreadsheet that looked like a map of systematic theft. Total embezzlement over 5 years, 4.7 million Nigerian nairas, equivalent to approximately $6.2 million USD. Sources include the Blackwood Foundation Educational Fund, household operational budgets, staff welfare allocations, and charity donations meant for scholarship recipients. Lina's hands clenched. Every number represented a stolen dream. The foundation fraud was most sophisticated, Dr. Okonjo continued. Margaret created shell companies, consulting firms, program development agencies, all with legitimate-looking paperwork. The foundation would pay these companies for services that never existed. The money would be laundered through 3 to 4 transactions, then deposited into offshore accounts under corporate names that trace back to Margaret. How did she hide it? Chidi asked. By exploiting her husband's trust and the foundation board's laziness. Margaret served as interim financial officer after the previous one resigned, a resignation she likely engineered. She presented sanitized reports to the board while maintaining separate books with real transactions. Richard only ever saw the clean version. Richard's jaw tightened. I signed off on reports I never properly examined. The household fraud was cruder but equally effective, Dr. Okonjo said. She inflated expense reports, claimed 500,000 Nigerian nairas for furniture that cost 200,000 Nigerian nairas, pocketed the difference. Charged the estate for staff training programs that never occurred. Allocated welfare budgets that were never distributed. And the staff exploitation. Lina asked quietly. Dr. Okonjo's expression hardened. That's where it becomes criminal conspiracy. Margaret operated a loan scheme targeting vulnerable employees. She'd identify workers with financial crises, medical emergencies, family obligations, then offer advances at 30% monthly interest, compounding. The debt was designed to be impossible to repay. She showed a list of names. Lina recognized them, women who'd worked at the estate over the years. Blessing Adelik borrowed 100,000 Nigerian nairas for her mother's surgery. Owed 340,000 Nigerian nairas 18 months later. Grace Emeka borrowed 75,000 Nigerian nairas for rent. Owed 245,000 Nigerian nairas when she was fired for alleged theft Margaret staged. Patience Okonkwo Borrowed 150,000 Nigerian nairas for her daughter's school fees. Currently owes 428,000 Nigerian nairas. Patients gasped. But I've been paying. I've paid back over 200,000 Nigerian nairas. Which barely covered interest, Dr. Okonjo said gently. Your principal barely decreased. That's how she trapped you. How many? Richard's voice was barely audible. How many staff? 43 over 5 years. Total owed to Margaret's illegal lending scheme, 8.2 million Nigerian nairas. Total actually borrowed, 2.1 million Nigerian nairas. She turned victims into profit centers. The room fell silent. There's more, Dr. Okonjo said. We found evidence of manufactured incidents. Margaret would stage breakage or theft, then fine staff members for damages that either never occurred or she caused herself. Security footage shows at least 14 instances where Margaret deliberately created situations to justify dismissals or fines. She played footage, Margaret moving a vase to the edge of a table, waiting for a maid to walk by, then claiming the maid knocked it over. Margaret placing jewelry in a staff locker, then reporting it stolen. Margaret spilling wine on carpet she'd ordered staff to clean, then claiming they'd done it. She was running an extortion operation, Chidi said, his voice hollow. Essentially, yes. And the most disturbing part, Dr. Okonjo pulled up another document. She kept records. Detailed notes on each staff member's vulnerabilities, family situations, financial pressures. She studied them like a predator studies prey, identifying who to target and when. She showed Margaret's personal files. Lina saw her own name, sister in medical school. Desperate. Proud. Will break under sufficient pressure. Target, week 3. She planned this, Lina whispered. From the beginning, she planned to destroy me. She planned to destroy everyone who threatened her system, Richard said, his voice breaking. And I let it happen. I was so focused on business, so trusting in my marriage, that I enabled years of abuse. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, the evidence is overwhelming. Criminal charges include fraud, embezzlement, extortion, conspiracy, and financial exploitation. Margaret faces potentially 15 to 20 years in prison. Good, Richard said flatly. However, the lawyer exchanged glances with his colleague. We need to discuss something. Margaret made bail 3 hours ago. The room exploded. What? Chidi jumped to his feet. How? The charges. Her family posted 50 million Nigerian nairas bond. She's out on house arrest at her family estate in Ikoyi, with electronic monitoring. The prosecution tried to argue flight risk, but her lawyers convinced the judge she's not a danger. Not a danger. Lina's voice rose. She threatened my sister. She's been sending messages. Which we're documenting, the lawyer assured her. But legally, until trial, she has certain rights, including limited communication privileges. Lina's phone buzzed. Another message from Margaret. The audit changes nothing. I have recordings too. Conversations that will make Richard look complicit. Drop the charges, or I release them to media. His reputation, and his company, will be destroyed. Lina showed Richard the message. His face went ashen. What conversations? Another message, this time with an audio file attached. Lina pressed play. Richard's voice, recorded months ago. Margaret, handle the household however you see fit. I don't have time for operational details. You have full authority over budgets and staff. Another clip, whatever you think is appropriate for staff compensation. You know better than I do what's fair. Another, the foundation finances are your domain. I trust your judgment completely. She recorded you, Chidi said, covering herself, making it sound like you authorized everything. Out of context, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. Those conversations were about basic household management, not fraud. A jury won't know that, the lawyer interrupted. In isolation, these recordings make you sound complicit. At minimum, they establish willful ignorance. Margaret's lawyers will argue you knew and approved of her methods. Even if you're not criminally liable, the reputational damage. Blackwood Industries stock will crash, Chidi finished. Investors will flee. Government contracts will be reviewed. Everything you've built. I don't care about the company, Richard said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Another message from Margaret. 72 hours, Richard. Drop all charges. Pay me 100 million Nigerian nairas in settlement. Sign an NDA. Or I go public. Your choice, your reputation or your revenge. She's cornered, Dr. Okonjo observed. Which makes her desperate. And desperate people do unpredictable things. Lina's phone rang. Ada's number. She answered immediately. Ada? Are you? Sister. Ada's voice was wrong. Too steady, too controlled. Someone wants to talk to you. Lina's blood went ice cold. A new voice came on the line. Smooth, professional, terrifying. Ms. Nwoye. My name is Chief Adebayo. I'm Mrs. Blackwood's family attorney. Your sister is currently at my office, voluntarily, discussing her plagiarism case. We've discovered some very interesting discrepancies in her scholarship application. False financial information. Potentially fraudulent documents. That's impossible. We have evidence. Unless, of course, certain criminal charges are reconsidered. Mrs. Blackwood is willing to forget these discrepancies if you're willing to forget yours. You're threatening my sister. I'm offering a resolution. Mrs. Blackwood walks away quietly with a settlement. Your sister's academic record stays clean. Everyone moves on. Or, his voice hardened. Your sister faces expulsion and criminal charges for fraud. Your choice. You have 24 hours. The line went dead. Lina looked at Richard, at Chidi, at the lawyers and accountants who'd spent days documenting Margaret's crimes. She has Ada, Lina whispered. She has my sister, and she's going to destroy her unless we let her go. Richard's phone buzzed. His face went white as he read the message. What? Chidi demanded. It's from Margaret's lawyer. They're also threatening to release documents showing I knew about offshore accounts. They're fabricated. I never authorized those accounts, but they're sophisticated forgeries. Richard looked up. If those go public before I can disprove them, I'll be arrested alongside Margaret. The company will collapse. Thousands of employees will lose their jobs. So she gets away with it, Lina said numbly. After everything. She just walks away. Unless, Dr. Okonjo spoke carefully. Unless we find something she values more than her freedom. Something we can threaten in return. What could we possibly? Dr. Okonjo pulled up one final document. During the audit, I found one account she protected more carefully than all the others. Not offshore. Not hidden. A trust fund in her daughter's name. Everyone froze. Daughter. Richard said slowly. Margaret doesn't have a daughter. She did. 20 years ago. Before you met her. Dr. Okonjo showed them a birth certificate. Given up for adoption. Living in London now. Margaret has been secretly funding her education and life through this trust. 75 million Nigerian nairas total. If that information goes public, Chidi said slowly, her family will know she lied for decades. Her social position, the image she's killed to protect. Lina's phone rang again. Margaret, calling directly. Answer it, Richard said. On speaker. Lina pressed accept. Hello, Lina. Margaret's voice was poison honey. Have you made your decision? Actually, Lina said, looking at Dr. Okonjo's screen, I have a counteroffer. You have a daughter. And we know everything. The silence on the other end was absolute. Then Margaret's voice, stripped of all performance, raw with genuine fear, "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Lina said. 24 hours. Margaret. Turn yourself in, plead guilty, return every stolen penny. Or your secret becomes tomorrow's headlines. She hung up and waited to see if she'd just saved her sister or signed both their death warrants. Margaret's response came at 3:47 a.m. Not a phone call. Not a text. A car pulling up to the Blackwood estate. Sleek, black, expensive. Margaret emerged in yesterday's clothes, electronic ankle monitor visible beneath her designer slacks, her perfect composure finally, irrevocably shattered. Lina watched from the staff quarters window as Margaret walked to the main entrance, flanked by two lawyers who looked like they'd aged a decade overnight. "She's coming to negotiate," Mama Efima said quietly, appearing beside Lina. "People like her always try to negotiate." "There's nothing to negotiate," Lina replied, though her hands trembled. Ada was still being held at the lawyer's office, still facing fabricated charges, still the leverage Margaret thought would save her. Richard met Margaret in his office. Through security feeds Chidi had routed to the staff quarters, they watched the confrontation unfold. "You can't do this," Margaret said without preamble. "Exposing my daughter destroys an innocent person. She doesn't know about me. She doesn't know anything." "Then you should have thought about her before you threatened mine," Richard replied coldly. "I'll plead guilty. I'll return the money. Just leave her out of it." Margaret's voice cracked, real emotion, finally, beneath years of performance. "Please, Richard. She's the only thing I ever did right." "And the 43 women you trapped in debt? The students whose scholarships you stole? What about them?" "They were—" Margaret stopped herself. "Say it," Richard commanded. "Say what you really think. That they were expendable. That they didn't matter because they weren't your blood, your class, your world." Margaret's silence was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," Richard continued, voice like ice. "You will surrender to police. You will plead guilty to all charges. You will provide full accounting of every penny stolen and every person you exploited. You will testify against anyone who helped you, lawyers, accountants, family members. And if I do this, your daughter's identity stays protected. The trust fund remains intact. She never knows her mother is a criminal." Richard leaned forward. "But if you fight this, if you threaten one more person, if you make me destroy you publicly, I will expose everything. And your daughter will learn exactly who you are from tomorrow's headlines." Margaret's face crumpled. For the first time in anyone's memory, she wept. "I need Ada released," Lina interjected through the intercom. "Now. Before any deals." Margaret looked at the camera, mascara streaming. "Chief Adebayo has her. Call him off, and I'll surrender." Richard made the call, on speaker. "Release Ada Nwoye immediately, or every fabricated document in that plagiarism case becomes evidence of witness intimidation and conspiracy." 10 minutes later, Ada called Lina, sobbing with relief. "Sister, they let me go. They said it was all a mistake, that the investigation is closed." "Come home," Lina whispered. "Just come home." At dawn, Margaret turned herself in. Real arrest this time, no bail, no house arrest. The charges were read in Lagos Federal High Court: fraud, embezzlement, extortion, racketeering, witness intimidation. The judge, seeing the mountain of evidence, denied bail entirely. "The defendant has demonstrated both means and willingness to threaten witnesses," the judge declared. "Remand in custody until trial." Margaret was led away in handcuffs, no longer the perfect socialite but a criminal in a prison jumpsuit. The story exploded across Nigerian media within hours. Billionaire's wife arrested in 4.7 million Nigerian naira's fraud scheme. Blackwood Foundation scandal exposes years of theft. How Lagos elite enabled exploitation. Richard called a press conference that afternoon. Lina watched from backstage as he faced a room full of journalists hungry for blood. "I stand before you accepting full responsibility," Richard began, his voice heavy. "Not for the crimes my wife committed, those are hers alone, but for creating an environment where such abuse could flourish unchecked." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "I was absent," Richard continued. "I prioritized business over people. I delegated household management without oversight. I trusted without verification. And because of my willful blindness, dozens of people suffered." He paused. "That ends today." He outlined immediate reforms: independent oversight board for the foundation, transparent accounting with quarterly public audits, victim compensation fund of 10 million Nigerian nairas, all staff debts forgiven and wages restored with interest. Additionally, Richard said, "I'm creating a workers' advocacy office, led by Lina Nwoye, with full authority to investigate complaints and enforce labor protections. Every staff member will receive proper contracts, fair wages, healthcare benefits, and representation." The press conference lasted 2 hours. Journalists grilled Richard on every detail. Some questions were hostile. "Did you benefit from stolen funds?" Others sympathetic. "How could you not know?" Richard answered every one with brutal honesty that felt like public penance. When it ended, he looked exhausted, diminished, but somehow more human. "That took courage," Chidi said as Richard returned backstage. "It took shame," Richard corrected. "Courage would have been paying attention years ago." Over the next week, the reforms rolled out with stunning speed. New contracts drafted and signed. Back wages calculated and paid. Patients received 437,000 Nigerian nairas. Blessing's family got 680,000 Nigerian nairas for medical costs and lost wages. Every woman Margaret had trapped was freed, debts erased, futures restored. The Workers' Advocacy Office opened in a bright room with windows, symbolically opposite the old, cramped staff quarters. Lina's first act was updating those quarters. New bunks, proper bathroom, ventilation, a small kitchen. Staff housing that treated workers like humans. Ada's tuition was paid in full, with a scholarship for remaining semesters. She'd cried for an hour when Lina told her, then insisted on meeting Richard to thank him personally. "I don't deserve thanks," Richard said quietly when they met. "Your sister saved lives I endangered through negligence. She's the one who deserves gratitude." Blessing was released from the hospital after 3 weeks. She returned to work, but to the new Blackwood estate, with new rules, new protections, new dignity. "It feels like a dream," she told Lina during their first shift together. "Like I'll wake up and Margaret will be there, smiling that terrible smile." "She's not coming back," Lina assured her. "Ever." But on the day of Margaret's trial, 5 weeks after her arrest, something unexpected happened. The prosecution's star witness, the forensic accountant from Ernst & Young, didn't appear. Court was delayed, then cancelled. That evening, Dr. Okonjo's body was found in her home. Apparent suicide. A note beside her confessing to falsifying evidence against Margaret, claiming guilt and remorse. The note was typed. Lina received a text from an unknown number. "Did you really think my family would let me rot in prison? That we don't have reach, resources, power? The evidence against me just disappeared. And the witness who could rebuild it is dead. See you soon. M." Richard's phone rang. His lawyer, voice shaking, "The prosecution is collapsing." Without Dr. Okonjo's testimony and with her confession, Margaret's defense is claiming the entire case was fabricated. They're filing for dismissal. "That's impossible," Chidi said. "We have the evidence. We can testify." Margaret's family hired 3 former Supreme Court justices as counsel. They're arguing prosecutorial misconduct, evidence tampering, witness intimidation by the state. It's a scorched earth defense, And it's working. Lina felt the world tilt. She killed that woman. Dr. Okonjo would never fabricate evidence. Prove it, the lawyer said grimly. Because unless we can prove murder, Margaret walks. The judge is reviewing the dismissal motion tomorrow. That night, Lina couldn't sleep. She paced her new quarters, comfortable, safe, bought with Richard's guilt and Margaret's stolen money. But comfort felt like ash when justice was slipping away. At 2 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Patience warned. But Lina answered. Hello, Lina. Margaret's voice, no longer frightened, back to its old venom. I'll be home soon. And when I am, we'll discuss what happens to girls who forget their place. You won't get away with this. I already have. The case is dead. The witness is dead. And you, Margaret laughed. You're just a maid who forgot that wealth always wins. Lina heard voices in the background. Margaret wasn't alone. Who's with you? Lina demanded. Friends. Powerful friends who understand that people like us don't go to prison. We don't lose. We simply readjust. The sound of glasses clinking. Celebration. Sleep well, Lina. I'll see you very soon. We have unfinished business, you and I. The line went dead. Lina ran to Richard's office, burst through the doors without knocking. Richard sat in darkness, staring at nothing. She called. Lina gasped. She's celebrating. She knows she's getting out. I know. Richard's voice was hollow. Her family's lawyers already notified mine. The dismissal will likely be granted. Margaret will be free by the end of the week. So that's it? She just wins. Unless we find evidence of Dr. Okonjo's murder. But Margaret's family has resources. They can hide evidence, intimidate witnesses, by silence. Richard finally looked at Lina. I'm sorry. I thought justice was possible. I was wrong. No. Lina's voice was steel. We're not giving up. There has to be something. Her phone buzzed. An email from an address she didn't recognize. Dr. Okonjo knew she was in danger. She sent me insurance. Meet me at Murtala Mohammed Airport, Terminal 2, tomorrow 6 a.m. Come alone. Bring only Richard and Chidi. This is your last chance. Anonymous. Lina showed Richard the email. It's a trap, Chidi said immediately. Margaret luring us somewhere isolated. Or it's real, Lina countered. Dr. Okonjo was smart. If she knew Margaret's family would retaliate, she'd have prepared. We can't risk. We don't have a choice. Lina's voice broke. If Margaret walks free, she'll destroy everyone who opposed her. Me, Ada, every staff member who testified. She said we have unfinished business. What do you think that means? Richard stood slowly. It means we go to the airport. All three of us. Together. Sir. I've been absent long enough, Richard said. If there's even a chance of stopping her, we take it. They left at 5 a.m., driving through Lagos darkness toward the airport, toward an anonymous meeting that could save everything or end it. None of them noticed the black SUV following 3 cars behind, or the fact that Margaret's ankle monitor had stopped transmitting 20 minutes earlier. Terminal 2 at Murtala Mohammed Airport was eerily quiet at 6 a.m. Early morning flights hadn't started boarding. Security was light. The meeting spot, a corner cafe near international departures, was closed, chairs stacked on tables. Richard, Lina, and Chidi stood waiting, watching every shadow, every movement. This was a mistake, Chidi muttered, hand on his phone, ready to call security. Then a woman emerged from behind a pillar. Mid-40s, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses despite the dim light. She carried a leather messenger bag clutched to her chest. Dr. Okonjo's sister, she said without preamble. Chioma Okonjo. My sister knew she was in danger the moment she completed that audit. Margaret's family has connections in police, judiciary, everywhere. Amaka sent me everything 3 days before she died. Backup drives, encrypted files, recordings. She handed the bag to Richard. She recorded Margaret's family. Conversations about eliminating the problem witness. Plans to stage a suicide. They thought they were being careful. They weren't careful enough. Richard opened the bag. USB drives, audio files on his phone, transcripts. Why didn't you go to police? Lina asked. Because they killed my sister, Kyoma said, voice breaking. And I don't trust anyone. But Amaka trusted you. She said you were the only one brave enough to stand up to Margaret. So here. Take it. Finish what she started. She turned to leave. Wait, Richard called. Where will you go? Somewhere Margaret's family can't reach. London. Maybe. Amaka left money for this. Kyoma paused. Make sure they pay. Make sure my sister didn't die for nothing. She disappeared into the terminal. They drove straight to Richard's lawyers. The recordings were devastating. Margaret's uncle discussing handling the accountant, a cousin coordinating the fake suicide note, Margaret herself on a smuggled phone from prison, do whatever it takes. I'm not spending my life in a cage. Within hours, new arrests. Margaret's uncle, 2 cousins, the family lawyer. Murder conspiracy, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. Margaret's dismissal motion was withdrawn. New charges added. The trial date was set. 3 months later, Margaret Blackwood was sentenced to 18 years in Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. No bail. No appeals granted. Her family's wealth and influence couldn't overcome recordings of them planning murder. Richard stood outside the courthouse after the verdict, facing media once again. Justice delayed is not justice denied, he said quietly. Dr. Amaka Okonjo gave her life to expose the truth. Today, that truth prevailed. 3 months after the sentencing, the Blackwood estate was unrecognizable. Lina walked through the renovated staff quarters, bright, spacious rooms with real windows, proper beds, a common area with comfortable furniture. The transformation was so complete it felt like a different building. The Workers' Advocacy Office occupied what had once been Margaret's private study. Lina had insisted on that location, turning a space of oppression into one of empowerment. The red leather ledger sat in a glass case on the wall, labeled, "Remember what we survived. Remember what we changed." Blessing worked as Lina's assistant now, her debt erased, her confidence slowly rebuilding. Patience had been promoted to head housekeeper with triple her old salary. Chidinma was taking online business courses, funded by the foundation. Ada had completed her first year of medical school with top honors. She visited the estate regularly, helping Lina organize health screenings for staff, teaching first aid workshops. "You're doing what Mom dreamed of," Lina told her during one visit. "Helping people who can't afford help." "I learned it from you," Ada replied. "You spoke up when everyone else stayed silent. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Richard had transformed too. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations of Blackwood Industries, hiring professional management while he focused on the foundation, now legitimately helping students, transparently managed, independently audited. He spent more time at the estate, actually talking to staff, learning their names, their stories. The distance that had defined him was gone, replaced by something almost like humility. "I can't undo the past," he told Lina one afternoon. "But I can try to deserve the future." On a Saturday morning exactly 4 months after Margaret's sentencing, Lina stood in the old laundry room, the place where everything had started. It had been renovated, larger windows installed, natural light flooding the space, new machines, better ventilation. She traced her fingers along the washing machine where she'd stumbled after Margaret's strike, where she'd found the courage to say, "I am someone." Thinking about that day, Mama Ifema asked, appearing in the doorway. Always, Lina admitted. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed silent. You'd have survived, Mama Efima said. But you wouldn't have lived. There's a difference. The morning staff meeting began at 9. 23 women gathered in the new common room, some who'd survived Margaret's regime, others hired in the months since. Lina addressed them weekly, checking on concerns, updating policies. Before we start, Lina said, I want to acknowledge someone. Blessing, it's your first anniversary of coming back to work. We're grateful you're here. Everyone applauded. Blessing smiled, a real smile, no longer shadowed by fear. But as the meeting continued, Lina's phone buzzed. A text from Richard. We need to talk. My office. Urgent. Lina excused herself, walking quickly through hallways that no longer felt oppressive. Richard's office door was open. He stood by the window, face troubled. What's wrong? Richard handed her his phone. An email from Kirikiri Prison Administration. Incident report. Prisoner 47382B, Margaret Blackwood, escaped during medical transport to Lagos University Teaching Hospital. 3 guards injured. Prisoner considered dangerous. Authorities investigating. The words blurred. When? 4 hours ago. They tried to keep it quiet while they searched. But she's gone, Lina. Margaret is out there. Lina's phone rang. Unknown number. She knew before answering who it would be. Hello, Lina. Margaret's voice, ragged but triumphant. Did you miss me? Where are you? Close. Closer than you think. 4 months in prison gives you time to plan. Time to remember everyone who put you there. Background noise, traffic, voices, Lagos chaos. You took everything from me. My reputation. My freedom. My daughter, she knows now, by the way. Knows what her mother is. She won't speak to me. Margaret, turn yourself in. So I can rot for 18 years? I don't think so. My family may have abandoned me, but I still have friends. Resources. And rage, Lina. So much rage. The police will find you. Eventually. But not before I finish what I started. Margaret's voice dropped to a whisper. You're not in the laundry room anymore, are you? Not in the staff quarters? Where are you right now, Lina? Ice flooded Lina's veins. She looked around Richard's office, the windows, the doors. How do you? I told you. I have friends. People who've been watching. Waiting for me to give the word. Margaret laughed. Did you really think this was over? That you could destroy my life and just move on? Richard grabbed the phone. Margaret, whatever you're planning. Richard. My dear, absent husband. Still trying to be the hero after enabling everything for years. Her voice hardened. You both wanted justice. Now you'll get mine. The line went dead. Richard immediately called security, police, everyone. Within minutes, the estate was locked down. Armed guards at every entrance. Staff moved to secure locations. But Lina couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret was already inside. That she'd been planning this for months. That the escape wasn't random but precisely timed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a photo. Ada. Sitting in their apartment in Sorulia. Unaware someone was watching her through the window. The message below, choose. Your sister's safety, or your testimony at my retrial hearing next week. You have 24 hours. Lina stared at the image, her world collapsing again. She's been watching Ada, Lina whispered. All this time. She knew exactly where to hurt me. Richard was already dialing. I'm sending security to your sister now. It's too late, Lina said, seeing another message come through. Your sister just left for class. Medical campus. So many places accidents can happen. So many ways brilliant students can suddenly disappear. Another photo. Ada walking across campus, backpack over her shoulder, completely unaware. "I have to go to her," Lina said, moving toward the door. "That's what Margaret wants," Chidi argued, appearing from the hallway. "To isolate you, make you vulnerable." "I don't care." Lina's voice broke. "That's my sister. I won't let Margaret hurt her because of me." "Then we go together," Richard said. "All of us. And we end this. Today." They raced through Lagos traffic toward the medical campus, calling Ada repeatedly, no answer, straight to voicemail. When they arrived, the campus was chaos. Police cars, ambulances, students crowding around the medical sciences building. Lina's heart stopped. She pushed through the crowd, seeing the scene. Someone had fallen, or been pushed, from a fourth-floor laboratory. Paramedics surrounding a covered body. "No," Lina whispered. "No, please." A hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun. Ada stood there, shaking but alive. "Sister, it's not me. It's..." The paramedics pulled back the cover for identification. Margaret Blackwood's face stared at nothing, neck at an impossible angle, dead on impact. A police officer approached. "Witnesses say she was in the building, confronted a student matching your sister's description. There was a struggle near the railing. The deceased lost her balance." He looked at Ada. "You're very lucky, miss." But Lina saw something in Ada's eyes, something haunted, guilty. "What happened?" Lina asked quietly, pulling Ada aside. "She cornered me," Ada whispered. "Said she'd make me pay for ruining her life. She had a knife, sister. She was going to..." Ada's voice broke. "I pushed her away." She stumbled backward. The railing was old, broken. She went over. "I didn't mean..." "Self-defense," Richard said firmly. "Multiple witnesses. Clear threat. This wasn't murder, Ada. This was survival." But as police took statements and paramedics loaded Margaret's body, Lina felt the weight of it. For months of justice, reform, transformation, ending here, in violence, in death. Margaret Blackwood was finally gone. But the cost of that freedom would haunt them forever. 6 weeks later, the investigation concluded, justifiable self-defense. No charges filed. Ada returned to medical school. Life moved forward. Lina stood in the renovated laundry room one last time, touching the window that now let in sunlight. She thought of Margaret's final words, "You took everything from me." The truth was simpler and more painful. Margaret had taken everything from herself. Her greed, her cruelty, her refusal to see people as human, that had destroyed her more than any testimony or evidence. "Ready?" Richard called from the doorway. Today was the grand opening of the Amaka Okonjo Workers' Rights Center, a foundation-funded initiative providing legal aid, financial literacy, and advocacy for domestic workers across Lagos. Lina walked out of the laundry room toward a future she'd fought for, survived for, almost died for. The windows were larger now. The light was brighter. And she was no longer invisible. She never had been. But as she stepped outside, a woman in the crowd watching the ceremony caught her eye. Similar height to Margaret, similar build, wearing dark glasses. The woman smiled. Then disappeared into the crowd. Lina's phone buzzed. "Did you really think I'd make it that easy? M." She looked at the message, at the crowd, at the impossible impossibility. Margaret was dead. They'd identified the body. Buried it. But Lagos had many faces. And sometimes, the ghosts we create are harder to kill than the people they once were. Lina deleted the message. Chose to believe it was a cruel prank. And walked toward her future, refusing to look back. Even as something dark watched from the shadows, patient and waiting. Because some wars never truly end. They just pause. The end. Or is it? If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to turn on notifications, so you're notified every time I release a great story like this one. If underdog stories like this one resonate with you, take a moment to check our channel. You'll find a full catalog of powerful underdog stories. Stories of the overlooked, the silenced, and the underestimated who rise and triumph.